Okay, I am officially recording, it looks like.
I am recording as well. So
Wow,
you
look
want
at that. So we should probably go ahead and
you just
start,
want to get
right?
right into week 5?
Yes, yeah, I really want to get into week 5. This was an exciting week for me.
Let's
And
not
why, and just in general.
let's not even tease the people. Cody, your Cincinnati Bearcats had probably the biggest win in their program's history over the weekend, upsetting. I guess they were favored, so it's not an upset. It feels like it was an upset going into Notre Dame
Yeah,
and beating pretty easily Notre Dame. What are your thoughts and feelings and emotions? Are you still sane?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I talked a little bit about last week about how Brian Kelly definitely had this where Cincinnati fans didn't like him for a long time. And now that we went in the first time that we played them since, he left,
Yeah.
it definitely is like, oh, well, you left, but, we're kind of in a better situation. Um, we're not really in a better situation. I realize that. It's definitely gratifying and it feels good
I
to
don't
have
know.
that win.
I know you guys got up to two. What was that? 08, 09, 09. We got up to number 2 in the country. I feel like they're in a better position now.
In,
Just
in
more
2009,
stable.
they were ranked third.
Just more
Um,
stable.
I guess more stable, but the problem is until Cincinnati is in the Big 12, and even when Cincinnati is in the Big 12, it's still the weakest conference, and Notre Dame just has this place of authority in which they are considered a power team despite the fact that they're not in a conference. And honestly, I don't understand why the conferences are allowing that to happen.
Yeah.
Like frankly, if I'm any of the commissioners when we go to do the playoff, I'm going to be like, okay, well, Notre Dame, you need to join a conference. Like, sorry, but we can't just keep writing you in not being without a conference. Like, I don't see the point of not doing it. The only reason they're not going to do it is because each of the conference commissioners doesn't want Notre Dame to join another conference.
Yeah.
That's a whole thing, but we're talking about Cincinnati. Um, they might be, and Cincinnati currently in this moment is in a better position than Notre Dame's
I mean, they're
program
joining the Big
is
12.
currently in.
They were
Yeah,
there was still the Big East back in '09
yeah, yeah,
and the Big East at the very end. So
yeah. So yeah, I watched this game pretty much from start to finish. Shout out to JT and Chelsea. Now Chelsea Luevino got married this past weekend. I showed up 5 minutes late and missed everyone walking down the aisle. So shout out to them for having the most on time wedding I've ever seen in my life, because it was over by 2:30 and I was able to pull out my phone at 2:29 and start watching the game. I did actually logging into NBC. I did end up missing the first drive of Notre Dame, which I caught the highlights of afterwards. Which that was an exciting drive. It looked like Notre Dame was going to score, and it was kind of going to be a Notre Dame game. And then that interception really just took it away for Cincinnati and just showed that. Um,
I noticed
yeah,
Cincinnati has a very good pass rush and they're one of the best defenses in the country, but there is a serious problem with the Notre Dame offensive line that they just cannot block anybody. I think it was like
yeah,
16 total quarterback pressures on all three because Notre Dame used 3 quarterbacks over the course of that game. It's just shocking because Notre Dame is just they churn out NFL offensive linemen year in and year out, and it's just like, oh, they've got some freshmen that'll come in and be a top 10 draft pick in a couple of years, but they're really struggling this year, and it's not making Jack Cohn's job any easier. It's not going to make was it Brandon Pine? Is that his name? Brandon and
yeah. I
the
think so.
Tyler Buchner, whatever. It's not going to make their job any easier.
Yeah,
They're not
it's
super
not, and
skilled quarterbacks to begin with, so if their offensive line isn't blocking for them,
sure, and I think that the flip side of the coin is Cincinnati still has to root for Notre Dame.
yeah.
Notre Dame really can't lose
I,
another game for Cincinnati. Cincinnati needs Notre Dame to beat good the rest of the year.
I don't really think it matters
And
what unless Notre Dame literally completely tanks. But even then, I think they've got, if they go the rest of the table and go undefeated, what's keeping them out of the playoffs? I think they're in control of their own destiny at this
the
point.
playoff committee.
That's fair. We still haven't seen the first rankings yet from them, but we will get that in a couple weeks, won't we? And this, they're going to be in the top 4 as long as they take care of business against Temple this week, which they should. That should be a very easy game. But number 3 Penn State, or number 3 Iowa is playing number 4 Penn State. One of them's got to lose, so you got to think one of them is dropping below, and that puts Cincinnati right up into that top 4.
So I've thought about this as well. I'm really trying not to like look too far forward as a Cincinnati fan. I'm trying to be realistic about their shots, and we've seen the playoff committee drop group of 5 teams because they didn't play a Power 5 opponent. Last year is a perfect example of it. Cincinnati didn't play one week, and they dropped 2 spots because Iowa State won a game. And it's like, well, why? Like, they didn't lose. But it won't matter to the playoff committee because in November, Cincinnati, the toughest game left on their schedule at this point is SMU.
Yeah.
Which SMU has a win over TCU, who played with Texas really well this weekend. But I don't have confidence that the playoff committee is actually going to let them in.
Yeah.
I think the playoff committee is committed to not letting group of 5 schools in. And I don't know why. I think it's very silly, but I just currently have that feeling.
I think it's
and
fair. It's perfectly reasonable.
Until they prove me wrong, I'm gonna go with that so that I'm not disappointed. Frankly,
fair.
Cincinnati doesn't
just
have
trying to protect
a
yourself
tough schedule
from being hurt.
forward. I'm absolutely trying to protect myself, but I'm also trying to be realistic in like past, like based off past expectations. The goalpost has just been moved over and over and over.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you have to schedule tough teams. Okay, well, Houston did that. Okay, well, you have to go undefeated. Okay, well, Central Florida did that. It's just, last year, okay, well, we're going to put Ohio State in despite the fact that they've only played 6 games and aren't really a good team. And they did that.
Yeah.
Because they wanted the big teams in the playoffs.
Yeah.
They don't want Cincinnati.
I think this year is as good of a shot in the most perfect storm that there has been so far. Like you said, that the goalpost has been moved, but Cincinnati's got those group of 5 or Power 5 wins now. I guess Notre Dame's not technically in a Power 5 conference, but they're considered
it is technically considered a power team as they are part of the autonomy group.
Yes. And then they also have a win over Indiana. Indiana's not looking as good this year, so that's not as good, but still a win over a Power 5 team. And then you got to think about the landscape around the rest of college football. Clemson has 2 losses already. They are not making the playoff. Texas A&M was thought to be a threat. They have 2 losses and look like they can. They look like what I imagined Georgia's offense was going to look like coming into the season. That's what Texas A&M's offense looks like right now. Oklahoma, they're undefeated and they keep winning these games, but you don't feel good about Oklahoma right now. And obviously, the AP poll has put Cincinnati in front of Oklahoma, and that's something that wouldn't have happened 5 years ago. They would have just kept Oklahoma, even if Oklahoma was struggling the way they are now. They would have kept Oklahoma ahead of Cincinnati. So I think this is a perfect storm right now, and as long as they can take care of business,
I appreciate you trying to make me feel good. I appreciate it. I'm gonna maintain the level of cautious pessimism because I don't want to be hurt.
Oregon lost, so now the Pac-12's back out of the playoff discussion.
I'm gonna make some points about the Pac-12. I'm bitter. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I'm bitter. I'm bitter at the playoff committee because I think they've had every opportunity to put a G5 school into the playoff and didn't multiple times now. So
I think there was an argument against it in the past years. I'm not sure that there will be an argument against it this year.
there is. Sure, there is. There's a great argument.
Like
Cincinnati has less fans.
as another team. I get it from like the branding and like we want the best teams in this, but like from a football perspective, and that's what they've stated their goal is try to find the 4 best teams.
Yeah, that's a load of crap.
Well,
Because if
but
it was
let
from
me
a football
but
perspective last year, no, okay, sorry.
you can
No, I'm sorry.
you're good. No, you're good. You can make an argument back in 2017 when UCF went undefeated. Like who was it that got in over them? Oklahoma. Was it Oklahoma
It was
with
Georgia.
Georgia?
Georgia with a
Like you
loss,
could make
and
a
Alabama with a loss.
serious argument that Georgia was the better football team, just like on paper, like talent, everything. Like this year, I don't think you can make that argument about Clemson against like a 2-loss Clemson is just not a better football team. On the field, they are not a better football team than Cincinnati. Doesn't matter about resume, doesn't matter about they're not as good a football team. Oklahoma doesn't appear to be as good of a football team this year as Cincinnati. I think it's just different than in years past. Yeah, UCF was good
I mean,
and they
look,
were a great story, but
I
I don't know if on the
I
field they were as good. And I think Cincinnati could be.
I think you are right. I mean, Cincinnati still has to run the table. There's
They
still a
still
lot
have
of
to
games
take
left.
they have to take
They
care
have
of
8
business.
games left. Like they've got a Friday night game which is a good thing because they've been on the road the last couple weeks. But you know, Temple currently has a winning record.
I don't trust Temple though.
I don't trust Temple. Don't get me wrong. I don't trust Temple. I think Cincinnati should smash Temple. That being said, like there's a very letdown games happen.
Yeah.
It's happened to the best team. Like it happens everywhere.
They definitely cannot lose from here on out.
No, they can't lose. I even think honestly because it's Cincinnati. Like they don't have to blow out anyone, and you can't. Like to me, you can't put them as I'm not. You're not going to find a worse team than Cincinnati. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All right.
Then Temple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So moving forward, if Cincinnati wins out, and I don't think it matters on like the SMU game. If SMU and if it's a close game, like okay, that's a good win.
Yeah.
If SMU is undefeated going into that game,
SMU could be ranked by that point if SMU kind of keeps on winning because
Yeah.
SMU does look
and
really
they probably
good.
should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. SMU's looked good in the past few years. They've had flashes of just of being pretty good, and they've started off well over the last few. I think they've had at least went 4-0 most of the years, last few years. But yeah, so I don't want to spend too much time on this. The game itself was.
It was easy. It was easy. Like other than a certain part of like the end of the third quarter into the fourth, that was the only time you were like, oh, we could blow this. But then they had a great touchdown drive, took up a bunch of time, went down the field, scored.
Yeah.
And it was
Desmond Ridder looked awesome, especially on the long ball, which that's where he makes his money. He just throws a beautiful long ball. I think it was 5 for 6 on passes more than 15 yards.
Nice.
And then he's just mobile. So like you have that he has that ability. He did fumble the ball, I think once or twice, which has been a complaint of mine of his. But both of those fumbles, it was kind of as he was getting ready to throw it.
Yeah.
I don't have any complaints on Desmond Ridder. He played a remarkable game. The defense was the star, though. Absolutely, the defense, and it was guys that I know their name, but you didn't know their name. Like probably most people know if you're close to college football, know Sauce Gardner, but there were other guys in that front, and I think they recorded 6 sacks or some bullshit.
It was a lot.
They were nasty.
They were constantly getting pressure on whoever was at quarterback for Notre Dame.
Yeah,
just constantly.
Notre Dame had 3 quarterbacks in.
Yep.
Wild.
Yep.
I do want
to transition at one point because we do have a lot of other games to talk about. You got one more thing on?
Yeah, just I think Notre Dame fans are calling for Brian Kelly to be fired, and I think that is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. Like I listened because I just wanted to hear their opinion to Always Irish. It's a podcast by this one guy who just apparently yells a lot.
Okay.
And he was just angry, like very, 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 very angry.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
And
you're clearly the worst football team, and you're going to be that upset. Like, I don't know.
yeah.
Doesn't mean
Yeah,
you should fire Brian Kelly.
I get it. Cincinnati doesn't have the resume that Notre Dame has when they lose, like have a good loss. But I think this is a good loss.
Yeah.
If Notre Dame goes undefeated, like
Cincinnati's
if they were in a conference, they could probably still make the playoffs.
Yeah.
If they went undefeated,
and they had that championship game.
Yeah, if they had that championship game, they could probably still make the playoffs, but they don't. Nope. So,
all right. Well, we're talking UC. I think they're going to make the playoff. If I had to tell you right now, I think they make the playoff. But it doesn't really matter because it's going to come down to Alabama, Georgia. There's so much of a gap between these two schools and literally everybody else in the entire country. Yeah. Alabama really just smacked around Ole Miss on Saturday, and Georgia, that was pretty tough to watch if you're an Arkansas fan. That was brutal. They just completely controlled that game from start to finish, blanked Arkansas. I really don't think anything else matters in terms of who's going to win the national championship outside of these two. Like, it'll be a cool story for Cincinnati to make the playoff, and whatever Big Ten team makes the playoff, or because I don't think a Pac-12 team's making. I don't think a Big 12. Well, unless Oklahoma runs the table, they'll probably sneak in there somehow. But I don't know. I don't think it matters because I think Alabama and Georgia are clearly the two best teams in the country. Not saying anything shocking there.
So here's my thing. Any team is beatable. I truthfully believe any team is beatable. Georgia looks awesome. Don't get me wrong. Georgia looks awesome. But also Georgia didn't like it. Where was Georgia like this against Clemson? Because obviously Clemson is not that good.
But Clemson's defense is really good.
Sure, but like they also lost to Georgia Tech, so like, or almost lost to Georgia Tech. So like, I'm not on the train that says Georgia is unbeatable. Also, I look at like Cincinnati played Georgia in the Peach Bowl last year. I know it's not the same team. I realize that, but it's not that much different. Like the teams aren't that much different. Especially considering you have more scholarships available for, seniors to come back. And so I don't know.
Georgia just is different. They have a different feeling this year than they have. Georgia's always had a really good defense, and their offense will I joke a lot about how much I hate Georgia's offense, but they have moments every once in a while where I can't remember the name of the Georgia quarterbacks anymore of the past. Jacob Eason, that was one of them. Like they'd have these Jacob Fromm. There's another one. Yeah, I'll have these flashes where they're like, oh, that's why he's going to be an NFL quarterback or at least a backup somewhere. But this year it just feels different. I don't know. That defense is just extra. Seems like nasty and unbeatable. Just like there's no way through them. But I don't see it happening.
I guess I should clarify. I didn't mean to say that. Georgia is. I didn't mean to say that like Georgia isn't very good. I think they look different this year. They look different than they've ever looked to me. They do look like a playoff team. They look like one of the 4 best teams in the country. I'm just saying.
The 2 best teams in the country.
I'm just saying, I do think that both Alabama and Georgia have shown that they can be beat. And while I fully think that Cincinnati makes the playoffs and plays either of them, I pick the other team. I mean, I have to, because like I can't, But that being said, I think that any team can lose.
Well, yeah. I can't argue against that. Literally, any given Sunday, any given Saturday, anybody can lose. Sure. Appalachian State beat Michigan. What was it? Montana beat Washington. Like these things happen.
Yeah. You give them the gradient, the 9 times. obviously they're taking the 9 times, but
I think it's
maybe they could
more
catch them on a
like
bad day.
I think it's like one in like 100,000 with Georgia and
Maybe.
Alabama. And if one of
Maybe.
those 1 in 100,000 happens this year, okay, that's crazy. But
I tell you what, I'm saving money to go to the national championship game. If Cincinnati made the national
oh
championship
God.
game, I am a different person. Like, you just couldn't deal with me. I'd be
Oh, yeah.
insufferable for like a week.
Yeah. I have like 2 more things I want to hit on quickly, and then I have a new little segment I want to do to kind of end the review up, unless you got something else. One quick thing.
I have a few things that I want to run through.
Okay, I have one. I'll do my 2 quick things real quick. I'm never betting on the Pac-12 again. I don't understand that conference. I don't understand why Arizona State looks like shit and can't play with one team 1 week and then they come out and beat UCLA, and why Stanford gets blown out by, was it Washington State beat them or I don't know. Somebody beat Stanford and then they beat Oregon. I'm done with it on Pac-12.
Pac-12 is stupid, man.
And then is Ohio State back in the playoff discussion? And is Michigan for real? Is Michigan a serious Big Ten threat?
Ohio State was never out of the playoff discussion.
I feel like people were putting them out of the discussion there for a little bit.
But they did that when they lost to Virginia Tech, and look what happened that year.
Yeah, fair.
And this is like kind of why I also think that the playoff committee could slight Cincinnati, because if Ohio State runs the rest of the table, has a loss against Oregon, and
you're a big old anti-Oregon or big old Oregon fan. No, you're against Oregon right now because you want that loss to look as bad as it can be. You want it to be.
Sure.
You want the Oregon loss to look worse than the Notre Dame looks good. Like that's the direct comparison, I guess, for Ohio State, Cincinnati.
But that's the thing. If Oklahoma's unbeaten, I think that the only team that's beating Georgia or Alabama in the regular is, they don't play each other in the regular season, do they? I can't remember.
No, the only chance they can have to meet is the SEC championship.
But if they make the SEC championship, they're playing. They're both going to be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So you got 2 teams accounted for. Then you got Oklahoma if they're undefeated. Then you got that 4th spot.
Yeah.
And if Ohio State,
I'm going to say it right now, I don't think Oklahoma's going to be in this conversation. So I think that 2.
I don't think so either, but they've found a way to win, and that is they've found a way to win.
Fair.
I don't think they should be in the conversation because they haven't looked good in any game that they played so far.
Not one game has Oklahoma looked good.
So like they've won, and that is what good teams do, but not one game. But yeah, no. So all right. That was your first thing?
That was my second. First was just that I'm not betting on the Pac-12. Second was, is Ohio State back, and is Michigan real?
So running through my notes, my first thing that I kind of want to put out there is this was the week for the top 25 to lose. There was 9 top 25 teams lost this week. I also think it's funny that Clemson is unranked.
Unranked for the first time since 2014. 7 years.
Wild to me. This is a weird year, but it's going to be a fun year, I think. I used to hate how late the college football playoff ranking started, but now I actually I'm from a different mindset. I actually kind of like them, like how late it is, because
you could.
Yeah, sorry, I burped. No, I like how late it goes because now we actually get to see legit. Because frankly, like I was sitting back here saying, well, Iowa is not very good, and they destroyed Maryland, and I was like thinking, okay, maybe pretty good, and Iowa just like beat them up.
Well, and I think we'll find out for sure who's the real one from Penn State and Iowa, because both those teams you're kind of like, are they really this good? Like, are they really the third and fourth best teams in the country? And we're gonna find out if neither of them are for real, and this is just gonna be an awful game, or if one of them is way better than the other. Like, we're gonna find out this weekend.
So I I'm not gonna like bet on this, and like don't mean to take up too much time with it, but Iowa. You know how many turnovers they forced and or had against Maryland?
6.
6 interceptions and a fumble recovery.
Fumble. Yeah.
So nine out of 10 times when you have 7, when you're +7 in the turnover mark, you win.
Yeah.
Like 9 out of 10 times you score 50 points.
Iowa's got the
So
second best, the second highest rated defense per PFF, Pro Football Focus, and I think Georgia's 1 and Michigan's 3. So it's Georgia, Iowa is the number 2 defense rated, and then Michigan.
yeah. So I mean, Iowa's defense looks awesome. I still haven't seen enough because like it's a lot of points, but I haven't seen enough from their offense to show me, okay, they're down 2 touchdowns. They need to drive the length of the field. Like
Can
they've
they do
won
that?
based off of positioning,
Yeah.
and because their defense is good. But I don't believe that they can do that if they're in a game in which they're down.
Mm-hmm.
Still don't.
I agree.
Still think like they have a resume right now to say, yeah, they probably deserve to be in the top 5, top 4, really.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they will lose, and that's just because of the style of game that they play and how they play. They don't have an explosive offense.
Yeah, they can't fall behind.
Let's see here. I want to run through just a few games.
Okay.
Just like I don't have a ton to say. Army was handed their first loss by Ball State.
Mm-hmm.
Go Testicle Tech.
Yeah.
Liberty beat UAB in UAB's home opener.
Malik
UAB,
Willis had a hell of a game.
Yeah. UAB's first game in their brand new like $100 million stadium. It's a beautiful stadium, and they unfortunately lost their first game in it. Clemson barely beat Boston College, and that's why they're unranked. I don't know why Auburn is ranked. I don't really understand it.
Because they're Auburn.
They haven't. Yeah, they're Auburn, but like you barely beat Georgia State, and then like you lost to Penn State. So like
Auburn for like the last 10 years has existed in that 15 to 25 in the rankings. They just
it's silly.
Never get higher than that.
They're not,
but they're
not that good.
But they never drop out of that.
It's stupid. Oregon State looks good.
Hey, it makes that week 1 win for Purdue over Oregon State look a little bit better.
So is Purdue making the playoff if Oregon State goes?
No, because we can't beat Minnesota. Bowling Green can beat Minnesota, but we can't beat Minnesota.
Yeah. The Arkansas-Georgia game didn't. I mean, I didn't really watch it because, frankly, I was driving, and also I just had a bad feeling about it.
I turned it off at halftime. I couldn't watch it anymore.
Yeah, Ohio State looked really good against Rutgers. They looked better against. They looked like a team that could compete for national championships in some ways.
CJ Stroud's finally getting it together.
Yeah. Kentucky beat Florida, so that's neat. I like that.
First time in like 50 years, something like that they've beaten Florida.
No.
40 years.
No, they beat. It's like they beat them now twice in like the last 4 years.
Oh, I thought it'd been like 40 years since. I thought I read somewhere.
No, but prior to that, it had been like 40 years.
Gotcha.
And it's like the first time in like some dumb amount of like 70 years since they beat them twice in 4 years. So.
Gotcha. Maybe that's. I don't know.
Yeah. And then the last thing that I really wanted to touch on for this week, and I know that we're moving close to our what we want to be our time limit. How hot is the hot seat at Miami?
I'm surprised he still has a job. Like,
do you think it's getting hot and muggy? I listened some swamp ass.
I listened to the Dan Le Batard Show, which is a Miami-based podcast, and they do a local hour pretty much every day where they feature local sports. And they talked about Miami on Friday morning after, which it was just a crushing defeat to Virginia, off the post to lose the game, and they wanted Manny Diaz fired like that night, like the after the game, they wanted him gone. They're calling out they've moved past the athletic director in their want for change at the program, and they are going after the president of the university now. Like, hey, fire the AD, fire the coach, get somebody in here who will actually take this seriously and spend the money necessary in upgrading our facilities and hiring a coach that doesn't have to learn on the job. That's something that they've complained about a lot. Is they keep, other than Mark Richt, they hire coaches that are really big time head coaches on this kind of level for the first time, and they want change.
I can't argue with them, but I honestly, I mean, I'm all right. So I'm looking at this. Miami versus Florida State, which is usually like their biggest game. I don't even know if it's going to be televised. Like,
I don't even think that's their biggest game anymore. I think they take the Florida game more seriously at this
but
point.
is Florida on their schedule this year?
I don't know. I feel like they play them pretty much every year.
But biggest probably supposed to be your biggest. I mean, it's your biggest rivalry.
Yeah.
But all right. So looking at their schedule moving forward, they have North Carolina this, NC State next week, then Pittsburgh, Georgia Tech, and all of those teams at least look competent. And
they do have a bye this week. They don't play North Carolina until the following week.
Oh, so they okay.
North Carolina is playing like Florida. North Carolina's playing Florida State this week.
Right. Yeah, I mean, so that's the thing is like, are they gonna win another game through that stretch? Like, the next game that I was like that I like look at their schedule, I'm like, yeah, they absolutely should beat that team is Duke, and that's their final game of the year.
Yeah. Well, you see, I think now's the time if you're going to fire him now. You got the bye week. You can kind of have a coach come in like, hey, I know this sucks and we're terrible, but we're going to finish the season strong, guys. We're going to do it for yourselves, if not for the you on the helmet. Like, I don't know, give a rah-rah speech or something. But, like, if it's 2 weeks from now, or I guess 2 weeks from last Friday, and we're leading into Miami, North Carolina, and Manny Diaz is still the head coach there, I think Miami fans are going to riot, and I think that it is not going to be a good performance against North Carolina. I think they get their butts whooped again by North Carolina because they got killed.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's entirely possible. I don't see him being the head coach of Miami next year.
Oh, definitely. God, I hope not.
But here's the thing: is like
the sake of the
youth. If I'm Miami and I'm an entirely private school relying on private funds, I don't fire him until closer to the end of the season because
that's the other thing.
Then the buyouts last.
They're in the
buyouts last.
Terrible financial situation because of all the buyouts that they've done.
Yeah, they've had a lot of them, and they haven't gotten paid that money because no one leaves.
Yeah.
They need to build their own damn stadium.
Yes, it is complete horse crap that it's 45 minutes away from the campus. Like, how do you expect students to go out when there's?
Well, they don't. That's the thing.
But like,
how expect students to go there?
You should. That's your life.
No, exactly. That's the point of college athletics is to have it there. I would love to do a conversation on that. And we've talked about it, teased it before, but I really want to like actually research that before. So like maybe next week we'll talk about that. But NFL stadiums, it just doesn't work anymore. I don't know very many teams in which it does work now, especially when you have at least a 30-minute drive to the damn stadium.
Yeah.
And Miami has a 45-minute drive because that's a big city, sprawled out.
I mean, it'd be one thing if the team was good and it was 45 minutes away. You'd probably get more student turnout. Not as much. Yeah. I mean, not full attendance, and there'd still be kids. I don't want to go 45 minutes away, but like if the team is not good and it's a 45-minute drive, that's just asking for 6 people to show up to the game.
Yep.
All right. Well, we've gone really long right now, but I do want to run through this final thing. I'm gonna start box scores of the week. I'm gonna go through the box score. I'm gonna scour through them, and I'm gonna find some of the best lines. So I have eight players in their games over the weekend. Starting with Brian Robinson, Jr., running back for Alabama, who had 171 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns. Just ran straight through Ole Miss. Will Rogers, quarterback, and Mekhi Polk, quarterback and wide receiver for Mississippi State. They had a big win over Texas A&M. Will Rogers was 46 of 59 for 408 yards and 3 touchdowns, and Mekhi Polk was 13 catches for 126 yards and 2 touchdowns. Pretty impressive. Moving to Western Kentucky, Jareth Stearns and Bailey Zapp. I remember talking about Bailey Zapp at the start of the season.
Yeah.
But Western Kentucky is looking pretty good, and their offense is just as fun as when Jeff Brom was there, which is the reason that Purdue hired Jeff Brom. But that offense we haven't seen that at all. Bailey Zapp was 46 of 64 for 488 yards and 3 touchdowns against Michigan State. And the wide receiver Jareth Stearns was 17 catches for 186 yards.
Solid. Some of those yards and TDs came in garbage time, though.
Still,
being honest.
I'm just looking at the box score. We're just looking at the box score stars. I don't care how they actually played the game. I just want the big numbers in the box score.
Okay.
Here, these two are pretty impressive. So Georgia Southern, 2 running backs, Logan Wright and Jalen White. Logan Wright had 10 carries for 208 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jesus. That's some like NCAA football stuff, like way back in the day. It's 20 yards per carry.
That's the guy that I took Cincinnati to 10 straight national championships. That's my quarterback throwing for like 6,000 yards in a game, scoring 22 touchdowns
on like 10 passes.
Exactly. Yeah.
The other running back, not quite as efficient with his carries. He had 14 carries for 157 yards and 2 touchdowns. I don't remember who Georgia Southern played, but they do not have a good run defense.
Right.
Finally, Chase Brown, Illinois. Illinois almost got beat by Charlotte this weekend. Not great from the Illini. But their running back had 26 carries for 257 yards and 2 touchdowns. Pretty impressive by Chase Brown.
Georgia Southern played Arkansas State.
That's right.
By the way.
Yeah. So Arkansas State, not a good run defense. They had, on 24 carries, let me do quick math, 365 yards on 24 carries.
Jeez.
All right.
What's the average of that? You said 324?
365. And 24 carries.
They're averaging 15 yards a carry. 15.2 yards a carry. Jesus!
15
That's
yards
insane.
a carry.
I love it. I love that. Okay, so that makes me feel really good about at least one of my bets this week.
Okay.
Yeah, but that was this week in football.
Thanks for watching.